Welcome, everybody. We're glad that you joined us today on our second audio series from our web series, Courageous or Crazy, Being Your Own Boss. Today we're talking about our second module, Your Range of Alternatives in Evaluating Different Businesses. I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser with Fran Choice. On the webinar, joining with me today is Carl Dierschow with Small Fish Business Coaching. Carl.
Thanks, Leslie. Appreciate it. And welcome everybody who showed up today. We've got some really interesting stuff that we're going to talk through today. I hope you had a chance to look at Module 1 that we posted before. Today we're going to focus on the issue of there's a broad range of alternative directions that you can go when you're looking to be your own boss. So we're going to explore that a little bit and give you some pretty concrete examples of what these things look like. So let's launch into it. I'd like to start with just a very simple structure. We're going to start off with a nice structure, which is build, buy, or join. This is just a high-level structure that we put in place, three distinct options. There's other ways to think about it, but it's just a way to simplify the decision because each of these directions kind of has its own flavor to it. So let's look at the build direction. First, if you're going to build something, many people think of that as building a one-person company or a larger organization from scratch. So this is the kind of scenario where you have a bright idea, you think that you have a customer need that you've identified, you have a really wild invention that you think might rock the world, whatever, and you would like to build a company around that. Or you just want to maybe sell your skills. You want to be a one-person consultancy perhaps, but largely independent of all the other companies in the world. You want to go out and do it your own. So this is kind of the quintessential be your own boss kind of concept. So that's one of the directions that we could go, but there's some other interesting ones as well. Let's look at the buy direction. So if you want to buy something, you could buy an existing company. So maybe you have a friend who's looking to sell their business, or you could go to a business broker that does that. I know that this is something that Leslie does a lot in the franchise area. So, you know, buying into a franchise is one of the alternatives. Well, it's going to take an investment on your part, and the value, of course, that you get is that they'll give you a brand and a system and some products to sell and things like that. Kind of, you know, a business in a box kind of concept. Some are more mature than others. So that's a direction that you could take if you want to buy into a company. Another one that's kind of similar, actually, is buying into an agency or a dealership. So this kind of model is used in places which are regulated, say like financial industries, things like that, or where they wanted to have more independent companies which kind of use the same brand, but there's also a lot of identity of you as an individual. And, you know, so you think of maybe an auto dealership or something like that, where the auto dealership will perhaps be identified with a large brand like, you know, Ford or Chrysler or whatever, but they have a fair degree of independence from that as well. So, yeah, this kind of depends on the industry that you're in, whether it would be a franchise agency dealership or a totally separate company, but not entirely. The last one was when you want to join something that already exists. So the easiest example there is if you want to be an employee of another company, as a worker or as a manager or whatever. In that case, then you are still being your boss in a certain sense, in that you're still directing the course of your career and the contribution that you want to make to that company, but you're operating in an environment that is much more constrained because you're given a job description and a set of expectations for what you're going to deliver for that company. Something that's a lot looser is a collective. So an example here would be a set of people that decide that they want to leverage each other's work, but they don't want to actually form a company around it. You know, so they're maybe not contractually obligated to each other, but they're just hoping that by being good buddies and working with each other that they'll all benefit. This actually happens quite a bit in my industry in coaching. It's something that I looked at a bit, but you know, there's other industries where this is a pretty popular thing as well, especially when you're looking at people who are, say, independent consultants but see value that they could get out of working with other people who are also consultants. A third alternative here is where you're joining a direct marketing company, and we'll talk a lot more about that. But in this kind of situation, you're taking on a role of not only selling the direct marketing products, but also working to grow the company by bringing new people on board. And typically they'll have arrangements where they encourage and reward you for bringing new people on board. So, so this is kind of the general structure. Leslie, would you like to talk now more about some specific examples?
Yeah, and Carl did a great job at kind of outlining what we see as kind of three sort of broad alternatives. And what I'd like to do is just kind of go a little bit further now into specific examples along the buy, build, or join, and specifically how it relates to kind of investment and also risk. What we have on the screen that you're looking at right now is just kind of a spectrum from the left-hand side, what would be perceived typically as low risk, and on the right-hand side, high risk. And let me kind of walk you through what that really means. If you could advance the next slide, Carl, we can give a little more specifics onto what I'm talking about. And then off the chart, we're not going to talk too much about it, but this comes up from time to time when people are looking at businesses. Some people do fall into these ones that are hard to categorize, where people, you know, are either gambling professionally, semi-professionally, they're in a pure research mode, or a hobby business. So anywhere along the spectrum, we're going to focus on the ones that aren't truly off the spectrum that you see on the far right.
Yeah, those aren't really being your own boss and building a business like we were talking about with the rest of this. So.
We wouldn't throw those into the buy, build, or join. Those are on the spectrum, sort of off the charts in terms of risk and reward, for us to really kind of be able to validate and present those as a viable option, at least in the scenarios that we're talking about.
Yep.
And we can advance one. So here we're going to start kind of on the left and work ourselves to the right. When we look at the range of investment opportunities or business opportunities, on the left-hand side, one of the ones that typically comes up on high investment, some might say low control or rewards, are the very strong national franchise systems that you see out there. And that would obviously be on the buy side. And, you know, obviously the one that comes up most people think of in a franchise system is a McDonald's. But there are others in that category that are not food-related. Meineke Mako, on the auto supply side, other very large recognized national brands that are not outside of food, painting companies, things like that that you would recognize all over. ServPro, ServiceMaster, those are in the restoration business, but national players kind of fall on that left side of the spectrum. When we talk about low risk, because you're joining a national franchise system that has been proven, most people would evaluate that as being relatively low risk. There's a high success ratio in people who join those types of companies. But given that, there's very low control in that. As you probably can imagine, when you are the owner of a McDonald's, you have really no control over the business itself. You are required to offer the same products that there are in every McDonald's. There might be some regional differences, but essentially it's very, very low control. And depending on your personality and your interest in the type of business that you have, that may or may not be of interest to you. And also low reward and or high cost. And on the reward side, you know, it's obviously going to take a lot longer for you to build equity and return of investment on a large company like a McDonald's that's going to be upwards of $1 million. It's very costly, so it does take a little while to turn that over. There's also more of an intangible issue when we talk about reward, and that's really sort of the intrinsic value that you might have as an entrepreneur in really building something or buying something that you yourself really take pride in, that it's something that you've built. So some people might perceive that to be low reward on the intrinsic value side when they're evaluating the businesses. So Carl, if you could advance, we'll keep working ourselves to the right and give some more examples of types of businesses that fall along the spectrum.
Well, there was a question that came in about this one. So if I'm over here looking at these kinds of expensive investments and yet I expect low reward, then why would I do it? You know what? I guess why would somebody pay a whole load of money to McDonald's and yet not expect that much of a reward in return for it?
Well, and I think it's clarifying what we mean by reward. If you're looking at intrinsic, it may not be a reward. I think over the long haul, you will make pretty substantial return on your investment if you have the ability to ride it out for the period of time it takes to recoup on a large investment. So if your goal on a short term is to have positive cash flow and ROI very quickly, or you have very little to invest, that's going to be a difficult scenario for you to see initially any rewards, any financial rewards coming out. So I think rewards can be looked at both ways, and that's why I try to articulate both the intrinsic reward of what type of business you're going to get into and what reward you would have both in a short-term and a long-term basis. Carl, does that help kind of answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. And especially the thinking about what do you want short-term and long-term, I think is a really useful question there.
Right. Okay. So Carl just advanced the slide, and so let's talk about a little bit if we're moving towards the right on the spectrum. Under that is kind of two things that I think sort of fall in just to the a little bit more to the right of a very low risk, low control, and that's being an employee, which certainly is an option for people who are considering whether or not they want to go into a business, whether or not it makes sense just to stay put or to find a new corporate career or buy an existing business. And let me talk about sort of being an employee first. There is this perception that being an employee is low risk, and the reason why it's sort of on that side is that there's typically no monetary investment. You are going to be paid for your services. You're going to be getting a predictable, stable paycheck, and so in that respect, there is low risk. I think people could argue that being an employee could fit all the way over onto the right side because there is risk in being an employee in today's market, as you've probably seen. But for our intents and purposes, we're going to talk about it being on the left-hand side, mostly because of the risk in terms of the investment that you have to make. It does fall on the low control spectrum because, as you know, as being an employee, you are kind of subject to whoever is running the business. You may not have overall control of the business. You may have somewhat control over what you do on a day-in, day-out basis, but essentially you're giving up the control of the direction of the business to whoever owns it. And depending on what your goals are, that may or may not be kind of where you want to be on a long-term basis. Let's shuffle down to the one that's just slightly below that and buy an existing business. Now this one kind of falls sort of almost in the middle. But in terms of a risk, when you buy an existing business, it can be a little bit lower risk than starting on your own because presumably, if you've done your research and you know this business is viable, you're going to be walking to a business that has already positive cash flow. They have customers, they have employees, they're up and running. So in terms of starting from scratch, from zero, and walking into a business that is already producing, that puts it into a category that's a little bit lower risk than starting out of the gate from cold. You are probably going to be paying a little bit more on an existing business as opposed to starting on your own because you're going to be buying both assets that are tangible, products, retail products, inventory, any equipment, taking over a lease, payroll, et cetera, and also the value of the sales that you're going to be purchasing. So if you evaluate that from a business that you're starting completely on your own, in terms of a cost perspective, buying an existing business may be a little bit more expensive. On the control side, on buying an existing business, again, you have to determine what type of business that you're buying. You may not be able to have much control over the direction or change of that business. If you're buying an existing franchise, for an example, you're still going to be subject to whatever the franchise parent has in the franchise agreement about how you can market, what products you sell, et cetera, et cetera. So on the control spectrum, it still is shuffled over a little bit to the left under low control. Low reward and high cost, it's sort of shuffled onto that side just because it is a little bit more expensive to start a business from scratch, and it could also fall into that low reward spectrum where it might take a little bit longer to recoup your investment and or the intangible value of what you're going to be doing and what you get, you know, intangibly or inside you intrinsically for running a business. Carl, did any questions come in that or clarify anything further?
Well, I think one of the things I'm learning here is that it's not a simple just one direction arrow here. This is actually sort of a complicated array of factors, and even something like saying is it high risk or low risk is more complicated because it's like, well, yeah, there's some kind of risks and then other kind of risks are different, you know, and whether you reward, well, it depends on whether you're talking monetary reward or intrinsic things or short-term, long-term. so, you know, I can see why being able to talk with somebody through this is going to be a huge help.
And absolutely, and I think the clearer people are on their goals and why they want to get in business for themselves, going back to our first series of why you even want to go down this path, will really help you assess where you are on the spectrum, what type of businesses are going to be the best fit for you, and what type of risk you're comfortable, what type of control you want to have over your business and investment level.
Yep, absolutely. So sounds like you're doing an advertisement for the previous one, so that's okay.
Yeah, they need to catch up if they haven't seen this one. It'll make a lot more sense. So kind of right in the middle of our spectrum here, are businesses that are kind of right in the middle of risk, high, low risk, control, low control, et cetera. And let's talk about some of those. Buying an emerging franchise. So this is a franchise business that you may have never heard of that might just be getting up and running. Maybe there's only a couple. It's in a new industry or, you know, new into the market or new into the town. For whatever reason, it doesn't have the big national footprints that, you know, the McDonald's, the Subways, the Taco Bells, et cetera, have. And that sort of falls in that spectrum because it may be a little less costly, obviously, than your national players because they don't have yet all of the national imprint. They're still trying to cultivate and grow people, so there's incentives to have larger territories, and the franchise fee might be slightly less. And it's so that's in terms of the monetary risk. It's a little bit towards the higher risk, obviously, because it's an emerging franchise and doesn't have the national footprint. You are taking a little bit of chance as to how this business is going to grow and do in a particular market. Whereas, you know, if you open a McDonald's down on a corner, people are going to come because they know about it. Replicating an existing business. Now, this could be a business that might, you know, be running not as a franchise, as a standalone mom and pop, that you might have the opportunity to open a second branch in your town. So you just have the opportunity to open a second, let's say, muffin shop. One is doing very well. It's not a franchise. You get to know them. They say, okay, why don't you go ahead and replicate that and open that business in your particular town. So again, in the spectrum, because you're sort of building a business, there is some risk to that as opposed to a business that's already in existence or a national footprint, but it's probably not as costly as buying a large business. You do have a little bit more control because you will be building the business yourself and you're not as contractually obligated by replicating a business as you would in a franchise agreement. Let's talk about the strong direct marketing companies. And we have an example of one I think everybody probably on the webinar today is probably familiar with, Mary Kay. That one has a very good solid reputation. It's been around for a very long time. So if people are drawn to a direct marketing business. This one I feel kind of fits into that range of, less risk than an emerging one, which we'll talk about in a minute. Probably still reasonable in cost. A direct selling business is never going to have the costs associated like a large national franchise. In the control spectrum, you have a little more control over direct marketing business than you might have in a franchise or a business that you purchased, because you get to kind of market and sell the business how you see fit. A lot of them give you very wide leeway on how you communicate the business and what you do on your day-to-day basis. And low reward, high cost, I think are kind of in the middle because it is not as costly. Although on the risk side, you are really incumbent on yourself to do the marketing and the sales. So in terms of rewards and what you might get out of it, it's probably not as high and predictable as a business like a McDonald's or an existing business that you know that there is immediate cash flow in. The final one under that is selling consulting services, and that's kind of where a business coach, or if you're an accountant or some other service-based business where you offer your knowledge or expertise to other people, kind of falls into this category. A lot more control than obviously buying a business or a franchise. On the spectrum of high to low risk, you are going to be a little bit higher risk than if you bought something that has national cachet, because you are starting it from scratch and there are no customers, to speak of other than those that you generate yourself. You're responsible for marketing. If you are more of the control-oriented person where you like to have control over how the business grows, what the business looks like, et cetera, a consulting business kind of in the build. If we think back to the bubbles that Carl was talking about, this is more of sort of a build situation because you're going to be building the business. Carl, did any questions come in, or can I elaborate something, or did you have a thought on that before we move along?
Well, I think for the consulting services, I see a lot of people who are older workers that are attracted to that because they have maybe 20 or 30 years of direct on-the-job experience that they figure that they can sell. And of course, in the current work environment, that maybe they don't feel like they can go out and get a job working for somebody else, maybe worried about age discrimination or something, or just are attracted to the idea of, hey, I'd like to be more independent. And it's really not expensive to set up those kinds of things. But, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize is that it is expensive to start becoming your own marketing and sales engine. Unless by some magic coincidence you have a bunch of ready customers who are just eager to get your services, you've actually got to get out there and sell it. It becomes like the direct marketing company too. You've got to become a full-time salesperson, and that can be a shock for some people. So I know that it's something that I went through as I was establishing my own coaching business. But also I see a lot of other consultants struggling with the same kind of thing.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And finally, sort of the last on the spectrum is starting a new company from scratch, kind of what Carl was alluding to, but even more I would say a product-based business or a new restaurant or something where you are starting yourself, you have no footprint or blueprint to follow. This is yourself, so you're going to be investing in, potentially in inventory, marketing, logos, websites, whatever you need to kind of get the business up and running. So that, I would say, definitely is high risk because you're going to probably be bootstrapping this, probably not taking any income in for a while. You're not sure how the business will do because there's really no predecessor perhaps in your category that has paved the pathway. You're kind of on it on your own. But on the side of, control, for sure, this is a great business if you are, a Bill Gates type of person who wants to build your own entity start from scratch, have your fingerprints on everything you do in the business. If that is really appealing to you, then starting a business absolutely from scratch is probably where you need to be, even evaluating the risk to that. And then, high reward, obviously you're going to be taking the money in for yourself, so dollar for dollar. On an intrinsic perspective, having that be your business that you start from scratch can be very rewarding. The final one on the spectrum is, I would say, sort of an emerging or a direct marketing company that doesn't have national cachet. And, there are so many that pop up, and you can probably have friends, family, or et cetera. You can probably rattle off about 10 or 11 of these that that there just isn't a proven track record as to, people being successful. They may not know what it is. It may be a product that is new or trendy and may be hard to sell. Again, high control. You're not investing a lot typically in these emerging businesses. A lot of them you can get into for $50 or less. So you just have to evaluate in the scheme of things, what are your goals for the business? Are you trying to have a flexible business that you don't have to put a lot of money in, that you have a lot of control, that may or may not work? Or are you looking to try to replace your income very quickly, have ROI, have a business that's kind of stable, that you don't have to do a tremendous amount of marketing, and you just kind of want to build it, they will come. So I hope that at least looking at types of businesses along the spectrum have helped you orient kind of where you are in your mind about risk, your risk tolerance, what you're looking to get out of the business, what you're looking to invest, and looking at the various businesses along the path to kind of help you identify where you should be putting your efforts in terms of investigating. And Carl's going to talk about that a little bit further in the next step about kind of where you go next.
Yeah, thanks. And there's a great question here. I think probably for both of us. So let me ask you first, Leslie. So there's some well-known statistics from the Small Business Administration that most businesses fail in the first few years. And depending on which stat you're looking at, maybe it's 95% in the first 5 years or other kinds of numbers like that. But does that, in your opinion, apply mostly to the people that are over on the right side of the spectrum, and the things over on the left side would have a significantly lower failure rate? Or is that not true? What's been your experience?
I mean, historically, if I've read, I know that, businesses that have kind of a national footprint or businesses that are already in place, there is less likelihood, if you can think about it, how many McDonald's have you known have gone out of business as opposed to a mom and pop muffin shop. I think the bigger question in terms of failure, Carl, quite honestly, for me, is, and this is going to be a topic addressed on another webinar of ours, is undercapitalized. So I see kind of the failure rate falling out if people just didn't go into it with enough knowledge about what they needed to have to keep the doors open and how long the ramp was really going to be a cash flow. So that's why I think it's really important when you're looking at this spectrum to know what it's going to take for you to build a business, how long it's likely going to be for you to start putting money in and keep the boat afloat. That's quite honestly what I see most people run up against, is they just were underfunded. And so I think that's why it's very important to understand where you are in the spectrum. What's been your thought on that, if you've read anything or have your thoughts on your clients that you've been coaching?
Yeah, my observations are pretty much the same. I see a lot of people getting into with unrealistic expectations of the time that it takes to achieve profitability. And, we will talk more about that there's actually different objectives for what profitability looks like. There's the time to recoup your investment. There's the time to start being able to pay yourself, time to be able to say that you're actually showing a profit on a regular and sustainable basis, different kinds of objectives there. And I do think people come in with unrealistic expectations. And, I honestly don't know that I see many businesses failing just because they had a bad idea, period. I mean, that does happen, and sometimes you really wonder why on earth would somebody even get into that business that it was doomed for day one. But I don't think that that's the usual thing. I actually think that a lot of people have ideas that could potentially work, and they weren't persistent and focused enough to actually get past the hump. And part of that, of course, is being able to have enough money to survive long enough, whether it's 2 years or 3 years or whatever, that people give up because they started getting into it, and then they found out, oh my God, this is going to take longer than I expected, and I need money to feed my family. So good segue, though. Let's talk about the next steps. So here are the webinars that we are planning going forward, and I hope that you'll all be able to attend and view these. We'll make sure that each of them is captured here on this YouTube channel so that people can follow along as we get these things recorded. The next step is that we're going to be talking about matching the goals to the alternatives. So if you remember, step one was talking about your personal and business goals. And then today we talked about the alternatives. So now we've got to go through a matching step to say, how do you evaluate between these two to actually make a decision? Because we need to narrow the field and then ultimately drive it to making a decision that you can commit to. And this is not an easy process, but hopefully we'll be able to walk you through that step by step. So anyway, thank you everyone who was able to attend today. Really appreciate it. Thanks much for the questions. That's helped make this a lot more lively. I'm Carl Dierschow. I'm a small fish business coach. I work with small business owners who are looking to establish businesses or to take their business to the next level of productivity and success.
Thank you, Carl. I think today was really great. I learn something every time I'm on one of these with you, and hopefully everybody did today. I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser. I'm with FranChoice, and I provide a free service where I help people who are exploring business, like the people on this call today. If franchising is kind of one of the things that you're interested in, I help them match up to a franchise that's going to be the best fit for their long and short-term goals, their lifestyle, their preferences, et cetera, et cetera. So I really appreciate you all
to walk you through that step by step. So anyway, thank you everyone who was able to attend today. Really appreciate it. Thanks much for the questions. That's helped make this a lot more lively. I'm Carl Dierschow. I'm a small fish business coach. I work with small business owners who are looking to establish businesses or to take their business to the next level of productivity and success.
Thank you, Carl. I think today was really great. I learn something every time I'm on one of these with you, and hopefully everybody did today. I'm Leslie Lautzenhiser. I'm with FranChoice, and I provide a free service where I help people who are exploring business, like the people on this call today. If franchising is kind of one of the things that you're interested in, I help them match up to a franchise that's going to be the best fit for their long and short-term goals, their lifestyle, their preferences, et cetera, et cetera. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to be on the call today. We look forward to having you back on our next series. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.